freaking first cut. Golly.
What's going on, YouTube? Henrik Stenson is out as Ryder Cup captain, and the wind is blowing in Minnesota. We'll cover all that and more. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll jump into it right now. Welcome to the First Cup Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. That right there in red bucket hat is Kyle Porter, who, KP, last time I saw you a couple days ago, you were wearing that hat. You were on a different continent. I'm just going to assume you haven't taken it off once since.
Yeah, that's a great assumption. I did put on my neck pillow on the flight back, so I had to take it off for that. But went to the pool today with all my kids. Wore it there. I mean, it's the best purchase I've ever made for 10 pounds. My wife hates it. She thinks I look like an idiot, which is probably true. But it just feels so like summery, and it reminds me of one of the great trips of my life to Scotland. So I'm never gonna take it off. It might be the cover of Normal Sport too. It's just me in this bucket hat.
Every page is a new picture of you in a bucket hat. You're back home? You're settled in. You're ready to. Have you gotten your clubs? I've seen like the outrage around golf clubs of international travel.
I think the problem, because we were talking to Webb Simpson lost his clubs. I think we talked about this in the preview. And I think the problem was when you switched flights in Europe. So a lot of the people that lost their clubs changed flights through London and then got up to Scotland. The only flights that I ever switched were in the United States, and everything was smooth. Everything was good. So, yeah, I was glad. I was talking to my wife I got home on Tuesday night. So like 8 my time, 6 your time. And I was telling her I was getting ready for bed, and I was like, how crazy is it that I woke up in Scotland and I'm going to sleep in Dallas, Texas? And she was saying, she said, think about telling like 97% of humans that have ever lived that reality, and like just how insane it is. I mean, it's I don't know. I think about travel all the time and the way that we can like fly places and get anywhere in the world, and it's extraordinary. But yeah, the trip overall, and I wrote about this for CBSSports.com, was just I mean, I'm far from the first to kind of fall in love with that part of the world, but it was very moving in a deep way, and not just the old course, but that area of Scotland, of the country as well. And it was a very, one of my friends today was talking about how a lot of times in whatever industry you're in, it's so good to go to the source of everything, like where everything started. So you can go to Augusta National or Pebble Beach or anywhere here in the United States, but everything's sort of a facsimile of that part of the world, right? That doesn't mean those places aren't awesome. Augusta's awesome. Pebble's awesome. All these different places that we have. Marion's awesome. These places, Shinnecock. But they're still always going to be a facsimile of where it started. So I think to go to the source of everything was, it's not paramount, but I think it really helps me understand kind of the sport and everything we're doing overall just a little bit better than I did before.
I like that. I hadn't really considered. Obviously, I know that's the home of golf. They tell you that all the time, but you're right. It's not just limited to golf. Going to the place where X started is generally pretty interesting and pretty unique.
Yeah, in any industry, right? Like if you study, if you're in movies or whatever, like going to like the theater where Shakespeare did his, like anything like that, I think it just gives you not only a greater appreciation, but a greater understanding and just a deeper sense of place and where things began. And I think that it's not life-changing necessarily, but I think it can only help us in the job that we're doing, which is trying to explain and talk about and sort of give our thoughts and ideas and opinions on the sport.
Europe, not only the birthplace of golf, but also in the midst of some Ryder Cup transitions. Talk about that in a second. Reminder quickly, we are indeed nominated for the best sports podcast. I believe we're the only golf podcast, and we're going up against the big boys. So we need some help. Go use the code or the link in the description. There's a QR code on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. Scan that bad boy. Get your vote in. You can go to podcastawards.com/app/sign up. Go down to the sports category and vote for us, the First Cut Golf Podcast. That will certainly go a long way for us as we try to oust some of the basketball guys and the football guys and all those guys that think they're so cool who aren't wearing bucket hats. We're going to try to take them down with a little golf podcast. Thank you very much.
This might be my Spieth Island hat, by the way.
Well, it is good island attire. In fact, Benny Levine thinks the island that it reminds him of the most is Gilligan's Island.
I saw that. Which is a hilarious reference, but it made me think that this might be my Spieth Island, like mayor of Spieth Island hat. So it's perfect.
Henrik Stenson, formerly of Ryder Cup captaincy, is headed to LIV Golf. And of course, then Kyle has been subsequently stripped of said captaincy. He released a very long statement in which I will not read in full, but the gist of it is, I made a financial decision. I understand the ramifications. It is unfortunate. I'll see you in Bedminster.
Yeah. It's, coincidentally, I think this was actually the first time that I sort of am understanding where like people on the other side of things from where I've been on. I don't know why. I don't know why that sort of clicked into place for me with this one's in particular, but I think before I was just like, I don't understand. And now I'm for whatever reason, I'm sort of like, okay, I guess I understand. And I think one of the arguments that people have made is, well, why would the DP World Tour, which is formerly the European Tour, ban him from being the Ryder Cup captain? And I think the answer to that, Rick, and I'm curious about your thoughts, is you've got an organization now that, and this is where I tweeted this out, but remember 5 years ago, it was like an inside baseball thing to joke about how people didn't understand any of the organizations that run any of the events. Right? Nobody understood who runs the Open. Nobody understood who runs the Masters, the PGA, the Ryder Cup, all these different things. And that was like kind of funny and whatever. It wasn't a big deal. Now it's like a fundamental, you have to understand that to understand any of the points being made about any of this, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like not that funny anymore as we are like yelling into the abyss about all this stuff. But the reason that Henrik Stenson is being banned from participating as the Ryder Cup captain is because LIV Golf, and I think maybe this has shifted a little bit since they've started. Like they're trying to end the European Tour. They're trying to end the PGA Tour. A lot of the talk last week, Rick, was about how I think starting out, they sort of just wanted to be in golf like they were in F1, like they were in soccer. And because of maybe some of the, I don't know if you want to call it arrogance from the PGA Tour and European Tour and whoever, they kind of are offended now and are kind of pissed off about it. And so now they're in a position where it's like, no, we're actually going to like take you guys down, and we're going to become the de facto regular season place to play golf. And the reason the European Tour can't let Henrik Stenson be the Ryder Cup captain is because they also they also run the tour that LIV is trying to end. Right? Like you can't allow those things to sort of cross paths. And so everybody's just in a crappy position. And I don't know, people keep saying, well, they should all come together and talk. What the hell are they going to talk about? What is the, I mean, seriously, I want to ask you that. When you hear people say they should get together and talk, what does that even mean? Like, what does it look like for them to get together and talk and work things out?
I assume there's very little common ground, because you're right. Even, and you see this in other business entities as well, right? Seeding anything to a potential competitor is generally not something that you're going to see often in business, let alone one that, from LIV's perspective, their competitor is more well established, has better players, has more events, has sponsors, has TV deals, et cetera, et cetera. And from the PGA Tour's perspective, their competitor has all the money in the world and is capable of picking off some of the more popular names. Like both of them are kind of in a crappy situation. And there's very little common ground. There's very little, I believe, room for them to coexist. Or why would they be interested in coexisting? And LIV has now turned into, and what I believe is they're doing a very good job of, Kyle, is like not an agent of chaos, but like the constant drip of the threat of LIV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why when they release a field, and they release a field with 3 open spots TBA, and
every time. Yeah. It's kind of like brilliant marketing, right?
And we lose our minds and say, well, it's probably Hideki and so and this and that. And we've heard every rumor from every golfer. And then when you can, really, anytime somebody wins an event moving forward, they're going to have to answer the question, or especially a major championship, like, are you going to LIV? Right? Because the idea is, if LIV could pick up Cam Smith, the reigning Open champion who just downed the face of the PGA Tour, if LIV could grab the current Ryder Cup captain from the European side, it just like, it allows them to just flex on you. It is like a brilliant level of, I don't even know, the chaos is not the right word. I don't believe it's chaos, but like the threat that they are constantly holding over the PGA Tour is, for us, exhausting, and for them, amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to them that there are not only 6 events left in the year that they can do that with, that they can just sort of like take one more, take 2 more, but also who knows however many events before that cup that you're holding holds a tournament next April, right?
Right.
I don't know what their schedule is going to be in 2023, but you've got 6 to 9, 10, 11. I don't know how many events before the 2023 Masters to continue to add players. I mean, honestly, Rick, like is LIV the second best tour in the world right now? I think it is. Like it's hard because like Rory and Rahm and those guys, Colin Morikawa was part of the European Tour, I guess.
Right.
Kind of.
I was trying to decide if the Korn Ferry Tour is better, which I guess it's not. But
no.
No, I guess it would have to be. I think it would have to be, yeah.
Which is crazy.
So it took 2 events. They've played 2 or 3, 2 events and
6 rounds. 6 rounds.
Yeah, right.
That's wild, right?
Yeah.
That they've become the second best. And I think part of me is a little bit to relate it back to the Ryder Cup stuff. Part of me is surprised that, and maybe they'll regret this, part of me is a little surprised that the European Tour did not sell itself to LIV. Sell itself sounds like that's a weird way to phrase that, but part of me is surprised that LIV has not bought the European Tour yet.
Well, that's something we talked about, right? We talked about we talked about how the European Tour was on the brink of extinction in 2020 and then could have positioned themselves in a bidding war between the PGA Tour and LIV. And obviously we know how that would have ended if it was a bidding war. I'm quite surprised as well that acquisition hasn't happened. Obviously for a lot, it would be so beneficial for LIV to have the European Tour, to have the OWGR, like it would be too easy.
Yeah, I think LIV feels just, it's starting to feel more, and maybe this is why I've sort of shifted on some of this a little bit. It's starting to feel like an inevitability. Like not even that they will exist, but that they will thrive. And I think that, I think I've softened, and maybe I'm just like parodying what Rory has said, but I was talking, I think I said this on the podcast. I have a friend that lives in Ethiopia, and he's done some business in Saudi Arabia. And I was talking to him about all this. He's not into golf, doesn't follow any of it. And I was presenting the sports washing thing to him. And he was like, man, I don't know. He's like, I don't know about that. I don't know if sports washing is part of their plan, and maybe it is, but he's like, what is part of their plan is just a complete diversification of their public investment fund. And I think my mind has been opened a little bit to the reality of how much money, and I think the Hideki piece is part of this, how much money LIV could make if it nabs a Hideki and gets a bunch of sponsors from Japan. And I don't know if any of that will play out, but my mind is at least open to the fact that, no, this is like really could be a legitimate money-making bonanza. And I think there's sadness in that for me, because and this is the kind of the heart of the issue for me is this who we want stewarding the game, right? Is Greg Norman and all these people that so let's say LIV buys the European Tour. Let's say that happens at some point. Do we want Greg Norman and everybody associated with LIV running the Ryder Cup? Is that a good thing? And I just, that's the question. And maybe it is I don't know these guys. I don't know what they're all about. Everything that they've done has said that it probably isn't a good thing. Right. And I think that the stewardship of the game is just something that I come back to a lot as being, it sounds very like hoity toity and stupid and whatever. But man, being at the Open last week and seeing what 150 years of the Open Championship at St. Andrews actually looks like, it's like, man, I would want that protected at any cost, right, into the future, because that is such a magnificent event and a monumental thing within our sport. And I just don't know if those are the people that I want stewarding the game into the future.
The next event, which is next week, opposite of Rocket Mortgage, is at Bedminster, where Henrik Stenson will make his first start, along with Charles Howell III and Jason Kokrak. Those were the three empty silhouettes on the field that were TBA. They have now been A'd. It's Stenson, Charles Howell, and Jason Kokrak. What took Jason Kokrak so long? He was like the first guy in line a year ago.
There's a couple guys that I'm like, how are you not on this tour? Actually, he was among them. The Charles Howell thing, how surprising is that?
Okay, he to me is it's very interesting, because you hear like the guys who benefited from the Tiger purse increases and the PGA Tour system for the last 20 years. CH3 is like a great example of a guy who was never really a superstar, didn't win all that frequently, made $45 million. Like he came out a big winner of the PGA Tour, I think. And now he is going to add, I'm sure, many zeros to the career earnings and to the bank account. I can't imagine what his guarantee is, but he to me is a very interesting case study where he's almost going to get the best of both worlds here.
The best of both worlds in terms of PGA Tour for most of his career and then LIV on the back end.
Right. And you could argue like there were a lot of guys who were superstars, but like did it too early for the PGA, and like the purses weren't big enough yet. Right. And like they weren't able to make as much money as you thought they should, or they ran into Tiger, or they were injured a lot. Like, to me, CH3 squeezed the most money out of his skill set from benefiting from the PGA Tour, and then is also now going to get the LIV stuff.
Yeah, I think I really struggle with the CH3 thing, because I know him not well, but decently. I don't even know him decently. I've interacted with him a lot on tour, and I feel like we have a good rapport, a good relationship, and he's not he's not Patrick Reed, right? He's not Pat Perez. Pat Perez is just Pat Perez makes known publicly what he is. If you have your eyes open and your ears open, like you can tell who he is and what he's about. And Charles Howell is not like that. At least not in all my interactions and dealings with him over the last 9 years or whatever. And so that's one that I really struggle with, of like, okay, does this mean that I have to start taking all of this stuff more seriously? Like, Charles Howell is not Jordan Spieth, and he's not Rory, and he's not JT, but it's a little bit of like a lesser version of, I have a ton of respect for those guys in the same way that I have a ton of respect for Charles Howell. And if those guys jumped, like those top 3 that I mentioned, then all of a sudden I have to like actually take this seriously. And I feel a little bit of that with Howell, which sounds weird because he's like 170th in the world and he's not a superstar or anything like that, but he's a serious person, unlike a lot of the people that are in this league. And so, and maybe that's just brilliant again on LIV's part to get people that are actually serious about golf and about history and legacy and their careers and all that stuff, that shift my mind and your mind and people that actually know like what's going on, all of our minds, to take LIV more seriously. But he's one that I've really grappled with about, okay, maybe I have to view all of this differently than I have been.
That's interesting. I was kind of thinking about it. Like, if you're Greg Norman and you're LIV, what's the selling point of Charles Howell III? Because
I think it's I think what I just said,
which is something I hadn't considered until you said it.
Right. And not just from me and you, but also from other players that know Charles Howell's a serious person. Right. So other players will look at Pat Perez and be like, whatever, dude. Right. But they'll look at Charles Howell and be like, oh, that guy's taking his career seriously and he works extraordinarily hard. I mean, all those guys work hard, but he takes golf and everything about it very seriously. And so other players might look at that. And I've got this written down as a note. It's like every additional player that they get that's either a star or is a serious person, it makes it easier for the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And that's why DJ was the perfect first person for this, because he's not, I mean, he was the mark. Like, he was the perfect first person to go. And then every person after that, it gets easier and easier and easier. And I think that's sort of what we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah, and you need that constant trickle, right, to make it easier, because Charles Howell III, 173rd ranked player in the world, wouldn't be one of the first 500 names that popped up from a casual fan starting to name golfers. But you're right, amongst his peers, there might be a couple more selling points.
I've got 2 more things real quick. Is that okay?
Please. Yeah, of course.
Okay. One, people have made the accusation, I guess if you want to call it, if NBC offered you more money, you would go over to them in a heartbeat, which is a fair thing to say. But I think what you're missing there is if NBC offered me, first of all, we can't say 200 million because I don't make what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't make it.
Yeah, let's just say like 5 to 10 times what you make.
Right. But then also said, okay, but you probably can't cover any Ryder Cups in person. And there's a chance that you won't be able to go to any of the majors. You won't get to cover any of those. Those experiences to me, Rick, and I'm in the media and nobody cares and whatever, but those experiences, I mean, you've been there. They are, you can't purchase what those experiences are. I was watching Sean Zock had a video from the 2018 Ryder Cup of remember the huge grandstand behind one, and Rory's going out in singles against JT, and all these 10,000 people or whatever it is are just chanting Rory's name. And you're like, holy cow, like that is, you can spend all the money in the world. You can't buy that. Right. And I just think that's a little bit of what people are missing. And to go along with that, Eddie Pepperell had this is my second thing. He had this tweet And I thought it was so good because it's like I've spent a million words trying to say this, and he said it in one tweet, and I thought it was excellent. He said, "I'm not sure who needs to hear this, but I'll say it anyway. Not everything a person does in life has to be about money. None of us will be here in 100 years, and nobody will care about your wealth. You'll be remembered for what you achieved, believed, and stood for." And it's like, yeah, man, like that's what I've been trying to say. Like, that's the deal right there. And I think that's what I get. So I got a tweet the other day that was like, why do you care so much about this? And I think that's it. Like, that is why I care, because just to be governed only by money is such a vapid way to live your life. And I don't know. Those are just like two other notes that I have.
I think that so I think there's obviously more than two sides of this, but I do think, okay, one side that, yeah, like the game of life that I play is money based, or the game of life that I play is something else based, not money based. And I think that both sides can't believe the other side feels that way, right? Like the people who are like, you would turn, like, how could you possibly turn down 5 times what you're making? Or like, why would you even ever consider taking that and giving up all of this other stuff? It's like there is such a disconnect because of the way that people experience their lives and have their own viewpoint and cannot fathom the other side of it.
Which is sort of what has made this conversation interesting, right? Because it's not just about golf. It's about how do you view the world.
Correct.
I can't remember who, somebody was saying that. It might've been Homa.
There's, this is not like a political take, but there's been a lot of research that there are 2 types of voters, generally in America. People that vote for their own personal needs or their own personal, whatever's best for them personally, or what is best for their community. And they define community. It could be your family. It could be literally people that you live close to. It could be the country as a whole, like whatever. And those are generally the 2 types of voters. And like, both sides cannot possibly fathom the other side, right?
Yeah.
There's been like a lot of research in that.
that's not the worst definition of like what we're seeing here, right? I mean, Chris Solomon was saying this on the No Line Up podcast. It makes sense why you would. I mean, there's a part that makes sense of why you would trade $40 million for the Ryder Cup captaincy or whatever it is. But then there's another faction of people that are like, man, I actually really care about protecting the future of the game. And I've been thinking a lot about how all of this ends. And I have no idea what that answer is. But the thing that I've been thinking about is something that I can't believe I'm about to say this sentence on a podcast, but the thing I've been thinking about is something that Trump said the other day in a post on, what's his social deal? Truth Social, or
of course, yes, Truth Social.
Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Like the truth. Truth Social.
What a normal sport moment this is. But he said, like, people who don't go to LIV right now are going to get nothing but a pat on the back from the PGA Tour when eventually all these leagues merge together. And I think he's like kind of right about that in a weird way, that's a scenario that's not unreasonable, like that's not inconceivable, that could happen over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I just am really struggling to understand what the end of all of this is. And I think that at the end of the day, as long as the major championships and the Ryder Cup are protected, which right now that's not that future doesn't look great. As long as those are protected, then I guess I'm okay with how it plays out from just like a golf fan or media person standpoint.
For good or bad, I think we will be able to see the writing on the wall one way or another in 9 months.
So by the Masters next year.
Yep.
What
here
go ahead. Go.
Here are the scenarios. The scenarios are LIV Golf has no way to acquire OWGR points, and these golfers who are currently playing there no longer play in major championships. The golfers that are willing and able to go to LIV Golf have no reason to go after next year's Masters outside of money, that they don't have the same reason to go right now or to go after the Tour Championship, right? Like there's nothing that's
and President's Cup.
And President's Cup. Like there's nothing that's going to be happening from January to April that makes going to, and then beyond, that makes going to LIV more appealing. So we'll know who's going and who's not by the time we get to the Masters. We will probably also have an idea of if these guys' OWGR points tanked and whether the majors have then been in theory protected or not protected. And like we will be able to see, I think we'll be able to game this out and see the writing on the wall by the time we get to Augusta National.
Okay, so tell me this: what if they get OWGR points? What if in January the OWGR board comes out and says, "Listen, we've told LIV they have to amend to 72 holes and they have to do whatever these 6 things," and then at the start of 2024 they're going to get OWGR points. What happens then? Is that it?
Well, it matters. It matters how much they're willing to spend. Like, it's not realistic, and maybe it is, but I don't believe it is realistic to give 72 different golfers $100 million a piece, and then also have all these outrageous. I don't know if that's realistic. So, it'll just become how much are they willing to spend and who's willing to take that money, and then they're gonna set the roster. Like it's not.
So you're just gonna have like sort of two.
You'll have 2 leagues.
Tours.
Yeah, you'll have 2 leagues and one.
But I think the part of this that I don't know if concerned about is the right term, but just didn't really see coming. Maybe is like we're gonna like up to this point. It's only been 2 events, but we haven't really like. I got asked to give a pick for the second LIV event on HQ, and I was like, I'm good. I'm not going to give a pick for this. Right? Like that. I mean,
I'm good.
Yeah. Like I didn't say it like that. I was kind about it, but it's very hard to take seriously because I think that a lot of the people in it are just like not serious people. I think DJ Pyhowski said that, and I agree with it. But if Charles Howell, and I keep going back to Charles Howell, but if he's like a harbinger of what's to come and like Hideki joins and Cam Smith and whoever, if those things happen, then all of a sudden it's actually, and Bryson's a little bit of this, like you sort of have to take it like as a serious thing, right? You can't just ignore it. And especially if they get OWGR points, then all of a sudden it is a serious thing, and that's going to be weird if you have 2 sort of, because there's always been a hierarchy, right? There's always been the PGA Tour and then European Tour and then Korn Ferry and go on down the list. Asian probably, and then Sunshine, and then I don't know. I don't know what the order is. But now you're going to have like 2 at the top. There's not going to be a clear hierarchy if they continue to get, like if their trajectory in getting players continues as like what it is right now. And I don't know how to handle that. Imagine if there were 2 MBAs and you had to cover both of them. That would be a very weird thing, right?
Yes, that would be bizarre. Yes. Yeah. Which I think that's, it's not an unlikely scenario, right? I think it'll, but
answer this real quick, and then we'll move on we'll do like 2 minutes on Scott Piercy and Sun JM. Is there a world in which going in like January 1, 2024, so not 2023, 2024, the LIV Golf Invitational Series Tour, whatever they're calling themselves, which
they need to fix their name and everything.
By the way, well, they're going to have to change it to the LXXII Tour if they get in 72 holes.
Yeah, I know.
Which is hilarious. Is there a scenario in which they are the best golf tour in the world going like starting January 1, 2024?
Is there a scenario? Yes. Do I think it's very likely? No. Because how are you defining? How would you define what the best golf tour is based on the strength of the players?
Yeah, this gets really hard, right? Because golf is one of the hardest sports to determine like it's so objective. Am I saying that right? Yeah, it's so objective. It's not subjective. You can't just say, well, that guy's swing looks good, so he's good. Right? It's about who has the lowest scores against the best players. And when you no longer have a world ranking system that includes 25 of the previous 78 best players or whatever the number is, then it gets way harder to determine who the actual best players are. So it becomes indefinable, which is so problematic for the game in general, right? Like and I guess they had this before, like the OWGR was only invented in whatever 1986. So I guess you had this before, but you were at least generally, I don't know, maybe it goes back to like the European Tour and the PGA Tour in the 80s, right? Where they didn't have OWGR and they were sort of more equivalent tours than they are right now. So maybe that's just how it is. But I think the part that's weird is that LIV and the PGA Tour would be existing in the same continent. It would be they would play so much in North America that it would just be a very strange thing.
I just believe listen, LIV has done a lot of things to really screw with the PGA Tour, and they've done them right. I think one of the things that they're really going to struggle with is that the guys that they have are going to they're generally towards the tail end of their career. They're going to have to constantly be replacing guys. And the only place they're going to be able to replace guys from are the PGA Tour.
Or guys coming out of college.
But there's still going to be very little context to those guys.
But if you get OWGR points, then all of a sudden they get in. I mean, this is why, like, the most money that they should spend, and the two guys that you've heard about a ton, is Cam Smith and Hideki. Because if you get Cam Smith, you say, well, we've got the Open champion, and we've got the Players champion, and we've got Hideki, who's one of the biggest global stars in the game. And then, like, we've talked about this a million times. So majors make stars, right? The Masters make stars. The US Open makes stars. And so the regular season tours, whoever has the most of those stars and like wins, like they're the ones that are the most important tour. I mean, that's essentially like what the PGA Tour is versus the European Tour. And once you start accumulating more and more stars based on what they do at the majors, then more sponsors come in, you can get more TV money, all that stuff. And it just kind of builds on itself.
But to me, and I completely agree, but that's like a decade plan, right? That's not a January 1st, 2023 plan.
Unless you all of a sudden buy the 4 reigning major or whatever, like,
that's true. There's a comment here from Ugly Hood Rat. Let's bring it up. They will create their own.
What a name.
Yes, and he wants to debate you, Kyle, by the way. They will create their own OWGR points. Simple. You guys are avoiding this argument because you know that destroys the PGA stance and power. Personally, I do not care about the PGA's stance and power. Secondary, Kyle.
Nor do I.
I could create my own OWGR points right now. The problem would be getting the Masters, the USGA, the PGA of America, and the RNA to recognize those and allow me to play in events based on it. They can create anything they want. They can create a ranking system.
100%. I mean, Data Golf does this, right? Like Data Golf has its own system based on it's more complicated than I'm not smart enough. I'm Taylor Gooch. I'm not smart enough to understand it, but it's based on like the sort of power ranking of guys that, and I think they're including, I need to double check this. I think they're including LIV in it. They've got all the LIV stuff on there. And so Data Golf has what you're talking about. But the point is that the stewards of those 4 majors their opinion is the only one that matters, which is essentially what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So like you can make, like, Greg Norman can buy Data Golf and it doesn't, or the Saudis can buy Data Golf. It doesn't matter. They can buy RickRockGood.com. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Greg Norman can hand his own OWGR rankings over to Augusta National and say, well, here's our OWGR. And they say, Okay. Like, what do you want me to do with
This
this? Here's our qualification system. It doesn't include that.
This is why, like, what's going to be, oh, my wife's coming in. I wonder if she has any LIV takes.
Does she have any bucket hat takes?
She won't come in.
That's smart.
She
That's
does have some
smart.
bucket hat takes. She thinks it's just grotesque that I wear this in public. But we've gotten one thing we've gotten wrong, Rick. We've gotten wrong we've always talked about the lawsuit as being players against the PGA Tour, like Phil suing the PGA Tour or Brooks suing the PGA Tour for not letting them play. That is like peanuts compared to the real lawsuit, which is going to be LIV against the OWGR. That is like the lawsuit, if it comes to that, that's gonna like rattle the foundation of this sport. Because if LIV can make a case against the OWGR, sort of, I don't even know like what the right terminology is, but for lack of a better term, keeping them out of the party, and they win that, then all of a sudden it is like just, you know, it's a free for all. It's a feeding frenzy, right? Like that's the one. And I didn't see that coming. I didn't realize that early on. It just sort of has hit me over the last couple of weeks that that's the real lawsuit to pay attention to. Not TJ doesn't care about the PGA Tour, and he's not there to sue the PGA Tour. And even if he does, it doesn't really matter compared to that lawsuit, which, if it comes to that, is going to be monumental for the future of the game.
Oh boy. All right. Well, that's a good cliffhanger to leave everybody on. We do have to talk about the 3M Open. We're like, 39 minutes over on what we were supposed to do for LIV Golf. So here's what we'll do. We'll look at the 3M Open. They're out there playing right now. And we've got some decent scores, or at least one in the afternoon. We'll get to that. We'll look at the live odds, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Scott Piercy, Sung J M out in the morning in Blaine, Minnesota, 6 under 65 KP. Things are kicking up in the afternoon, so much more difficult. But Tony Finau out on the course right now, 2 shots off the lead, 4 under par through 15, trying to make a run at this thing.
Yeah, I think Finau is interesting because he's not second. He is 4th in this field in strokes gained tee to green. So he's been hitting it great. I talked to him after the Open last week. He finished T28, I think, and he was in a great mood. He's always in a great mood. He's Tony Finau, but he's been playing really good golf recently. The Open was not necessarily the result that he wanted, but if you look at his results from Colonial, I think it was Colonial, Canadian Open, he was right there. He's really been playing better golf over the last few months. It would not surprise me at all to see him at or near the lead after round 1 and then go on and win this golf tournament, or at least contend to win it on Sunday.
Sung J M, Tony Finau, the co-favorites over at Caesar Sportsbook. They're both plus 350 with everybody else 14-1 or longer. Those two were 2 of the pre-tournament favorites, so things are shaping up there. The third guy, there was a big 3 at the 3M Open, Kyle. The other one was Hideki Matsuyama. Shot a 70.
Did he WD?
Oh, yes, he did. He shot a 77 and said, that wrist is acting up again. I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah, I mean, at least he didn't WD for fatigue like Robert Garrigus. That was tough.
That's tough.
What happened to him? Wasn't he going to LIV?
He was the first one who got his waiver denied.
That seemed like the
you never want to be the first guy through the wall, right?
That seemed like the tour just floating just a test balloon or whatever they're called out there just to see where things were at with Robert Garrigus. Yeah, it's a bummer. Hideki was a good get for this golf tournament, and obviously there's a ton of rumors swirling around him. I think that he's been injured a lot this year, but he's actually had kind of a quietly good year. He made what list did I see him on? He was on. He might have made all 4 cuts at majors. I don't know if that was the right list, but he's been playing pretty good golf this year, despite all the injuries surrounding him.
Yeah, and if you go back to his last start of last year, he's got 2 wins. He won the Zozo, he won the Sony, and he's played well, finished well at the U.S. Open, but a lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird stuff in between that.
The Sony feels like it was like 7 years ago. Was that this year?
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, he made the cut at all 4 majors. So he finished T14 at the Masters, T60 at the PGA, not good. 4th at the US Open. I don't really remember that. He shot like 66 on the last day or something. And then T68 at the Open Championship. So
your one and done selection, Marty Fish, did not crack 80. But considering he's not a golfer, that's a pretty good 81.
The Crooked First Cut podcast, guys. I'm trying to get home to my family, flying over the Atlantic. I actually deserve that because I forgot to tell producer Jacob that I was out. So I deserved it.
Honestly, you could yeah. We tried to get you who did I want? I wanted to give you somebody else, but I can't remember who it was, but we ended up
I probably would have picked Paul Goydos or Duffy Waldorf. Duffy Waldorf's in this field. What are we doing? Where are we at in society?
Yeah. The fact that, I don't need to do this, but the fact that Michael Kim withdrew from a PGA Tour event to play a Korn Ferry event is the system's broken.
Maybe Duffy withdrew. He was briefly in the field. Yeah, why did he withdraw to play in the Korn Ferry event? Because he needed Korn Ferry points?
Because he can earn his PGA Tour card for next year with Korn Ferry points.
Didn't Michael Kim miss like 29 cuts in a row?
After he won. He like missed like 17 of 18, won by like shattering the scoring record, and then missed like 30 cuts in a row. He's back to playing well, though.
Okay, so 2 quick things and we can end this. One, I've got the aggregate major scores of golfers who made the cut at all 4.
This is depressing. Go ahead.
So Hideki reminded me of this because he's one of only 9 that did it. 9.
It's Rory and Zalatoris are at the top, right?
Yes. So I'll start at the bottom. Hatton plus 19, which is kind of hilarious. Patrick Reed, that's actually impressive from him because he didn't really factor into any of them. He was plus 15. Joaquin Neiman plus 13, Hideki plus 6, Rahm plus 4. Rahm's major season was really weird. Like he was just not competitive at all. JT was minus 3. Obviously he won 1. Matt Fitzpatrick minus 16. Obviously he won 1. Zalatoris minus 21 and Rory minus 29. Minus 29. Rory gained 54 strokes on the field in majors, which is the second most of a player not winning a major since 1995, according to Philip Allen. Ernie Els gained 60 in 2004 and didn't win a major.
This game's sick.
It's maddening that you can have 4 amazing weeks and not win a major. And then you can have 3 horrible weeks and one it's the Michael Kim thing. One like week that's out of this world and win a major. And that person is more successful. That has to be maddening to the guys like Rahm and Rory and JT who are just consistently really good every week.
It's maddening to me, and I'm not even playing. So imagine how they feel.
I can't remember what my second thing was.
That's right. This 15-minute podcast is now 48 and a half minutes long. So I think we've covered the vast majority of what we were looking to do. We'll do it again, round 2, round 3, round 4, for this week's 3M Open. Producer Jacob does all the hard work behind the scenes. Kyle Porter is available on Twitter at Kyle Porter CBS. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.